The scorching Arizona sun beat down mercilessly as Olivia Oakridge struggled against the ropes binding her wrists, her dark eyes flashing with defiance despite the blood trickling from her split lip. Sheriff Malcolm Tanner circled her like a predator, a leather whip unfurled in his meaty hand. The town of Copper Creek's residents watching in uncomfortable silence from the dusty Main Street. "I ain't never whipped no woman before," Tanner drawled, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd in the summer of 1878. "But I sure as hell ain't about to make no exception for some thievin' Apache, no matter how pretty." Olivia raised her chin, her long black hair falling in tangled waves down her back. "I took nothing," she said, each word deliberate and accented. "The medicine was payment for healing your deputy's child." The sheriff's face contorted with rage. "Liar! We don't pay savages for witch doctorin'." He raised the whip high, its shadow cutting across Olivia's face. "That's enough, Sheriff." The voice was quiet but carried the unmistakable edge of steel. The crowd parted as Vaughn Zachary stepped forward, his tall frame silhouetted against the afternoon sun. His Colt revolver hung loose at his side, but his hand hovered near it with casual readiness. His face, bronzed from years under the western sun, remained impassive beneath the brim of his dusty hat. "This don't concern you, Zachary," Tanner spat, though his whip hand faltered slightly. "Get back to your ranch when you're about to whip an innocent woman in the middle of town," Vaughn replied evenly. "It concerns every decent man within eyeshot." In one fluid motion, his revolver cleared its holster, the barrel pointing steadily at the sheriff's chest. "Now cut her loose." The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on as Vaughn faced down not just the sheriff, but the prejudices of an entire frontier town. At 32, he'd seen enough injustice to last several lifetimes, and something in him had finally snapped at the sight of the proud Apache woman bound to the post. Sheriff Tanner's face reddened, his jowls quivering with indignation. "You're interfering with the law, Zachary." "I'll have your ranch for this." Vaughn didn't flinch. "What law says you can whip a woman who was paid fair and square for her services? Mrs. Henderson herself gave Olivia that medicine as payment for saving her boy's life." His eyes narrowed. "Or did you forget to mention that part when you arrested her?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sarah Henderson, the deputy's wife, pushed forward, her face pale but determined. "It's true, Sheriff. I gave her the medicine. Our Thomas would be dead if not for her knowledge of herbs." The sheriff's grip on the whip tightened, his knuckles white. For a moment it seemed he might lash out at anyone within reach. Then, recognizing the shifting mood of the townspeople, he cursed and threw the whip to the ground. "Fine. She's free to go, but I want her out of my town by sundown." He jabbed a finger at Vaughn. "And you just made yourself an enemy, Zachary." Vaughn holstered his gun with practiced ease. "Wouldn't be the first time." He stepped forward and cut Olivia's bonds with his pocket knife, careful not to touch her more than necessary. "Can you ride?" he asked quietly. She nodded once, rubbing her wrists. "Yes." "Then I suggest we leave before the sheriff changes his mind." Vaughn led her to where his horse was hitched outside the saloon. He helped her mount before swinging up behind her, acutely aware of the hostile stares following them as they rode out of town. They traveled in silence for several miles, following the winding path toward Vaughn's ranch in the foothills. The setting sun painted the desert in shades of gold and crimson, the vast emptiness broken only by scattered saguaro and the distant silhouette of mountains. Finally, Olivia spoke. "Why did you help me?" Vaughn considered his answer carefully. "Because it wasn't right, what they were doing." "Many things aren't right in this land," she replied. "Few white men notice, fewer still intervene." "Maybe I've seen too much injustice to stomach any more of it," he he said simply. As they crested a rise, Vaughn's ranch came into view, a modest but well-maintained homestead with a main house, barn and corral nestled against the backdrop of rugged hills. A few cattle grazed in the distance, with a small stream cutting through the property. "You can stay here tonight," Vaughn offered. "There's a spare room. Tomorrow I can take you wherever you need to go." Olivia turned slightly to study his face. At 25, she had learned to read men's intentions with unnerving accuracy. What she saw in Vaughn's weathered features surprised her. There was no hint of the usual lecherous expectations she'd come to anticipate from white men offering help. "My people's camp is 3 days' ride from here," she said. "But they will have moved on by now, following the deer herds north." Vaughn nodded, understanding the implication. She had nowhere to go. "The offer stands for as long as you need," he said, dismounting and helping her down. Inside the ranch house, Vaughn lit lamps against the gathering darkness and showed Olivia to a small but clean bedroom. "The washroom is down the hall. There should be clean towels." He hesitated. "I'll see what I can find for you to wear, and I'll have some food ready when you're done." Left alone, Olivia took in the simple room with its patchwork quilt and pine furniture. It had been years since she'd stayed in a white man's house, not since the mission school where she'd learned English before running away at 16. The memories were not pleasant ones. After washing the dust and blood from her face and hands, she changed into the clothes Vaughn had left outside her door, a simple shirt and trousers that must have been his when he was younger, along with a leather belt to cinch the waist. In the kitchen, Vaughn had prepared a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and coffee. They ate in companionable silence until Olivia finally asked the question that had been on her mind. "What will happen to you now? The sheriff seemed determined to make you pay for helping me." Vaughn shrugged. "Tanner's been looking for an excuse to come after my land for years. This just gives him one more reason." He sipped his coffee. "But I've got friends in these parts too. It won't be as easy as he thinks." "Why does he want your land?" "Water rights," Vaughn explained. "My property controls access to the best spring in the county. In these parts, that's more valuable than gold." Olivia nodded, understanding. Water was life in the desert, a lesson her people had learned over countless generations. "You should not have risked so much for a stranger," she said softly. Vaughn's blue eyes met hers across the table. "Some things a man can't walk away from without losing something more important than land or water." "Your honor," she guessed. "My humanity," he corrected. The following days settled into an unexpected rhythm. Olivia, with nowhere to go until she could locate her people, began to help around the ranch. Her knowledge of local plants proved invaluable in tending to a sick mare, and her keen eyes spotted a mountain lion stalking Vaughn's cattle before it could attack. Vaughn, for his part, found himself enjoying the company. Since his father's death 2 years earlier, he had run the ranch alone, hiring seasonal help when needed but largely keeping to himself. Olivia's presence filled a silence he hadn't realized had grown so oppressive. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Vaughn finally asked about her past. "How did you come to be in Copper Creek? Your people usually avoid the settlements." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. "I am. Between worlds," she finally said. "My mother was Apache, my father Mexican. I belong fully to neither. When the missionaries came to the reservation, I was sent to their school to learn the white man's ways." Her voice hardened. "They tried to beat the Apache out of me. They failed. And after the school, I escaped when I was 16. Tried to return to my mother's people, but things had changed. The young men looked at me with suspicion because of my father's blood. The elders distrusted my mission school education." She shrugged. So I travel between, using what I know of herbs and healing to earn my way. Some whites will pay for Apache medicine when their doctors fail them. Like Deputy Henderson's wife, Vaughn said. Olivia nodded. Their son had the fever that comes with spots. I gave him a tea that my grandmother taught me to make. He was better by morning. Her expression darkened. But the sheriff claimed I stole the medicine I was given as payment. Vaughn's jaw tightened. Tanner's had it in for anyone who isn't white since Apache has raided his father's homestead 15 years back. Doesn't excuse what he tried to do. They fell silent, watching as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the desert sky. Tomorrow I must leave, Olivia said suddenly. I have imposed on your hospitality too long. You haven't imposed, Vaughn replied quickly. Besides, where will you go? There is a trading post 2 days' ride north where news of my people sometimes comes. I will start there. Vaughn wanted to argue but respected her decision. At least let me ride with you. These parts aren't safe for a lone traveler, man or woman. Olivia smiled faintly. I've traveled alone for many years, Vaughn Zachary. Humor me, he said, surprising himself with how much he dreaded her departure. The next morning, as they prepared to leave, 3 riders appeared on the horizon, approaching fast. Vaughn recognized the lead rider, immediately Sheriff Tanner, flanked by 2 deputies. Get inside, he told Olivia, reaching for his rifle. She ignored him, standing her ground as the riders thundered into the yard. Well, Tanner called, reining in his horse. Looks like the Apache witch is still here, and here I was worried she might have moved on before I could properly thank her for her services to our town. What do you want, Tanner? Vaughn demanded, his rifle not quite aimed at the sheriff but ready to be. Just came to deliver some news, Tanner said with a malicious smile. Seems young Thomas Henderson took a turn for the worse after his treatment. Doc says he was poisoned. Ain't that something? Olivia stepped forward. That is not possible. The medicine I gave him, save it for the judge, Tanner interrupted. I'm taking you in, and this time there won't be any interference. He nodded to his deputies. Take her. Vaughn raised his rifle. She's not going anywhere with you. The standoff crackled with tension, 4 hands hovering near gun handles, the desert wind the only sound for several long seconds. You willing to die for an Indian, Zachary? Tanner asked incredulously. Are you willing to die trying to take her? Vaughn countered. The sheriff's face contorted with rage. This is official business. The girl poisoned a child. She saved that child, Vaughn insisted. And I'd bet my ranch Thomas Henderson isn't sick at all. This is just another excuse to get what you want. That's so, Tanner sneered. Then you won't mind if we ride to town together and check on the boy. If he's fine, she goes free. If not. He let the implication hang in the air. Vaughn glanced at Olivia, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. Fine, Vaughn agreed. But we ride together and my rifle stays with me. The tense group made the journey back to Copper Creek, arriving as afternoon shadows lengthened across the dusty Main Street. Curious townspeople emerged from shops and homes, watching the procession with wary interest. At the Henderson home, Deputy Jim Henderson met them at the door, his face a mask of confusion. Sheriff, what's all this about? How's your boy? Tanner demanded. This witch's poison working through him yet? Henderson's brow furrowed. Thomas, he's out back playing with the neighbor kids. Been right as rain since Miss Oakridge's medicine. Sarah says it's a miracle. The color drained from Tanner's face as Sarah Henderson appeared behind her husband, little Thomas peeking around her skirts with bright, healthy eyes. Sheriff, what's this about poison? Sarah asked, her voice rising with indignation. This woman saved my son's life when Dr. Williams said to prepare for the worst. Vaughn lowered his rifle slightly, eyes fixed on Tanner. Looks like your story doesn't hold water, Sheriff. Just like I thought. Tanner's hand twitched toward his gun, rage and humiliation warring on his face. This changes nothing. She's still not welcome in my town. Then it seems I'm not either, Vaughn said evenly, because Miss Oakridge is under my protection for as long as she needs it. A crowd had gathered now, murmurs spreading as the confrontation unfolded. Reverend Porter pushed to the front, his presence commanding attention. Sheriff Tanner, the elderly preacher said, I believe you owe this young woman an apology and perhaps some compensation for her wrongful treatment. I don't owe any, actually, interrupted Judge Harmon, who had emerged from his office across the street. I believe you do. False imprisonment, attempted corporal punishment without due process. Serious charges, Sheriff, ones that might interest the federal marshal next time he passes through. Tanner looked around, suddenly aware that the town's sentiment had shifted against him. His deputies had backed their horses away, distancing themselves from what was rapidly becoming a public disgrace. With a curse, Tanner reached into his pocket and threw a small pouch at Olivia's feet. There's $20. Consider yourself compensated. He turned his horse sharply. But I want you both out of my sight. As Tanner rode away, the townspeople approached Olivia cautiously. Sarah Henderson was the first to step forward, taking Olivia's hands in her own. Thank you again for saving my Thomas, she said, tears in her eyes. Please know you're welcome in our home anytime. Others followed with similar sentiments, a strange reversal of the hostility Olivia had faced just days earlier. Judge Harmon apologized formally on behalf of the town, promising that Sheriff Tanner would face consequences for his actions. As the crowd dispersed, Vaughn turned to Olivia. Still planning to leave in the morning, she studied him thoughtfully. Perhaps not immediately. It seems I may have allies here I did not know of. That evening, they stayed at the town's small hotel, each in separate rooms at Vaughn's insistence. In the hotel's dining room, they attracted curious but mostly friendly glances from the other patrons. You have changed things, Olivia observed over their meal. One man standing up for what is right. Vaughn shook his head. The people of this town aren't bad, just scared. Fear makes people forget their better natures sometimes. And what reminded them? Your gun. Maybe at first, he admitted. But then they remembered who they want to be. As they finished their meal, Reverend Porter approached their table, hat in hand. Miss Oakridge, Mr. Zachary, I wonder if I might have a word. The elderly preacher settled into an empty chair at their invitation. I wanted to thank you both for showing us a better path today, and to offer some news that might interest you, Miss Oakridge. News? She asked cautiously. Yes. A group of Apache passed through Miller's trading post about 3 days ago. From their description, they might be your people. They were heading toward the summer hunting grounds near Willow Creek. Olivia's eyes widened. You are certain? How did you come by this information? I make it my business to know the movements of all God's children in these parts, the Reverend said with a gentle smile. Many travelers stop at the church for water or rest. I listen and remember. After the Reverend left, Olivia turned to Vaughn, excitement evident in her usually composed features. Willow Creek is only a 2-day ride from here. I could find my people. Vaughn felt a strange tightness in his chest at the thought of her leaving but nodded. We can head out at first light if you'd like. She questioned. You have already done more than enough. These mountains can be dangerous, he said, knowing it was an excuse. Besides, I'd like to meet your people properly. Maybe establish some trading. Could be good for both of us. The journey to Willow Creek took them through some of the most beautiful and treacherous terrains of the Arizona Territory. They traveled light and fast, camping under the stars the first night. As they sat by the fire, Vaughn found himself telling Olivia about his past, how his father had brought him west as a boy after his mother's death, how they'd built the ranch from nothing, and how he'd fought to keep it after his father passed. "You speak of your father with great respect," Olivia observed. "He was a good man, taught me to judge people by their actions, not where they came from or what they looked like." Vaughn poked at the fire. "That wasn't always a popular view out here." "It still isn't," she said softly. Their eyes met across the flames, and something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first day in Copper Creek. "Olivia," he began, not entirely sure what he wanted to say. She smiled, the firelight casting a warm glow on her face. "I know," she said simply. They reached Willow Creek the following afternoon, but found no sign of the Apache camp. Disappointment etched lines on Olivia's face as they searched the area, finding only cold fire pits and tracks several days old. "They've moved on," she said, crouching to examine the ground. "Probably heading toward the higher elevations for the summer hunt." Vaughn watched her, seeing the conflict in her expression. "We can keep looking," he offered. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "It would take weeks to find them now. They will not stay in one place long during hunting season." "Then what will you do?" Olivia looked up at him, her dark eyes unreadable. "What would you have me do, Vaughn Zachary?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. They had been dancing around the growing attraction between them, both aware of the complications it presented. A white rancher and an Apache woman, the territory had seen such pairings before, but they rarely ended happily. "I'd have you come back with me," he said finally. "Not as a guest or someone under my protection, but as—" He trailed off, searching for the right words. "As what?" she pressed. "As whatever you want to be," he finished. "Partner, friend. More if that's what you want too." Olivia stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see the flecks of amber in her dark eyes. "And what about the town, the sheriff, your neighbors? Would they accept such an arrangement?" "Some would, some wouldn't," he answered honestly. "But my land is my own, and who I share it with is my decision alone." She studied his face for a long moment. "You would face their hatred for me." "I would face a lot worse," he said, surprising himself with the depth of feeling in his voice. The kiss, when it came, was tentative at first, a gentle meeting of lips that quickly deepened into something more urgent. Vaughn's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as years of solitude melted away in the heat of their embrace. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Olivia rested her forehead against his chest. "This will not be easy," she murmured. "Nothing worth having ever is," he replied, tilting her chin up to look into her eyes. "But I'm willing to try if you are." Their return journey to Vaughn's ranch took longer, both reluctant to end their time alone together. They spoke of practical matters, how the ranch could benefit from Olivia's knowledge of local plants, how Vaughn could help establish fair trading with her people when they returned to the area in the fall. But beneath these discussions ran a current of deeper connection, a shared understanding that they were embarking on something both beautiful and fraught with challenges. 3 days after their return to the ranch, Judge Harmon rode out to see them, bringing news that Sheriff Tanner had been suspended pending an investigation into his conduct. The judge also brought a surprising proposition. "The town council has been discussing the need for someone with knowledge of traditional medicine," he explained over coffee on Vaughn's porch. "Our doctor is getting on in years, and he's the first to admit he could learn a thing or two about the local remedies." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "You are offering me a position, a partnership with Dr. Williams to start. He's quite enthusiastic about the idea, especially after what you did for the Henderson boy." The judge cleared his throat. "It would mean coming into town regularly, of course. There might be some." Adjustment period for certain folks. You mean some people will object to an Apache healer treating their families, Vaughn translated bluntly. Initially, perhaps, the judge conceded. But attitudes are changing, Mr. Zachary. What happened with Miss Oakridge opened many eyes, including my own. After the judge left, Olivia and Vaughn sat in thoughtful silence, watching the sunset paint the desert in brilliant hues. "Will you take it?" Vaughn finally asked. Olivia considered the question. "It would be a bridge between worlds. My grandmother was a healer. She would be pleased to see her knowledge respected by the white community." She glanced at him. "And it would give me purpose here beyond." "Beyond us," he finished. She nodded. "I need that, Vaughn. To be more than just the Indian woman who lives with the white rancher." He took her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. "I wouldn't want you to be anything less than who you are." The following months brought challenges and triumphs in equal measure. Olivia began working with Dr. Williams 2 days a week, her reputation growing as her remedies proved effective where conventional medicine failed. Some townspeople refused her help at first, but desperation often overcame prejudice when illness struck. Sheriff Tanner was ultimately removed from office, though he remained in the area, a sullen presence at the saloon where he nursed both drinks and grudges. Vaughn kept his rifle closer whenever they went to town, but direct confrontation was avoided. In October, word came that Olivia's band had returned to their winter grounds. Together, she and Vaughn rode out to meet them, bearing gifts and trading goods. The reception was cautious at first, particularly from the tribal elders who viewed Olivia's association with a white man with suspicion. But when Vaughn presented the chief with a formal agreement written by Judge Harmon, and granting the Apache hunting rights on Zachary land, attitudes began to shift. By the time they departed 3 days later, tentative bonds had been established, with promises of further trading in the spring. That winter was the happiest of Vaughn's life. The ranch thrived under their combined care, and Olivia's practice in town continued to grow. They were married in a small ceremony at Christmas, with Reverend Porter officiating and a surprising number of townspeople attending. Not everyone approved, of course. There were whispers and occasional insults, especially when Tanner and his remaining cronies had been drinking. But the couple faced the opposition together, their bond only strengthening in the face of adversity. Spring brought new life to the ranch, calves in the pastures, wildflowers on the hillsides, and news that Olivia was expecting their first child. Dr. Williams confirmed what she had already suspected, his gruff congratulations masking genuine affection for his unusual partner. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing Vaughn had built the previous summer, Olivia placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "What shall we name this one?" she asked, a smile playing at her lips. Vaughn pretended to consider. "If it's a boy, maybe Thomas. After the Henderson boy who brought us together in a roundabout way. And if it's a girl, something beautiful and strong," he said, kissing her temple. "Like her mother." Olivia leaned into his embrace, watching as the first stars appeared in the twilight sky. "When I was bound to that post in Copper Creek, I thought my life was ending," she mused. "I never imagined it was just beginning." Vaughn tightened his arm around her shoulders. "Sometimes the worst days lead us to the best ones," he said. "If Tanner hadn't tried to whip you, I might never have found the courage to stand up to him, and we might never have found each other. Then perhaps we owe him a small debt of gratitude," Olivia said with a wry smile. "Very small," Vaughn agreed, chuckling. "And not one I plan to acknowledge to his face." As night settled over the desert, they remained on the porch, talking softly of the future of the child to come, of expanding the ranch, of building bridges between communities that had been divided for too long. It wouldn't be easy, they knew. The territory was changing, but old prejudices died hard. Yet in the circle of each other's arms, under a canopy of desert stars, the challenges ahead seemed manageable. They had faced down hatred with courage, overcome suspicion with kindness, and found in each other a love that transcended the artificial boundaries of race and background. In a land defined by its harshness, they had cultivated something rare and precious, a home where different worlds could meet and flourish together. And as the cool night air wrapped around them like a blanket, they knew with absolute certainty that whatever trials tomorrow might bring, they would face them together.